I will start and introduce our speakers. So we have Rosette. Rosette, good evening. Hello.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So Rosette, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Rosette. I'm really excited to be here actually. I'm Congolese, and I've been working for Opera for quite some time actually. So Opera is a browser company for those that don't know. I've been in the company for 6 years, been working across all of the products that they have, and as of now, I'm really sorry that I'm sitting here with my branding. That was not intended, but we actually had an NFT conference today, so I had to show up and represent. So yeah, that's about me. I don't know, should I do a fun fact?
Yeah, great.
What's funny about me? I don't know.
There's got to be something.
I moved to Berlin in 2016. There's actually no fun fact about me. I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to that because everybody has. Everyone
I
has a
love
fun
planners. I love planners, like the one that you do. I somehow collect notebooks. I don't know why.
Same.
Right? I have tons of them. People laugh at me about it. I don't know. There's something about a good notebook and just feeling the paper.
Okay, so I know what to get you for Christmas.
Yeah, and I love kitchen utensils while we're on that.
This is from TK Maxx,
Yeah,
and it says "Looking on the bright side."
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Great. Nice to meet you, Rosette.
Nice to meet you all.
So my name is Zakaria or Zach. I'm originally Moroccan. I left Morocco 12, 13 years ago. Studied in France math and then computer science. Then I wanted to try a new country, so I moved to Germany. The plan was to stay 2 years. 9 years later, I'm here. Worked for a big company, SAP, for 5-6 years, and I was extremely career-oriented. Till one day I just was looking at the manager of my manager, and I was like, wow, this is my life in 10 years from now. And I immediately decided to quit. Started my first company in augmented reality arts just because it was kind of the continuity of what I was doing, mainly augmented reality, not the art part. And then, yeah, after like 3 years of founding that company, Exhibit, I learned about business because I just came from tech. So it was like a lot of ups and downs, and I also took some time to reflect on what I really want to do in life. And there was always this idea that I want to do something in Africa, but I didn't know what exactly should I do in Africa. So I spent a lot of time reflecting, and the result of that reflection is the company that I have right now. It's called Wanda, and Wanda is basically doing wholesale between, so we go to Africa, we find producers in Africa of home decoration, accessories, anything, and we connect them with retailers here in Europe. It's still a baby company, but yeah, we already solved a lot of creative problems.
Nice. So we're
yeah.
gonna get a little bit deeper into the detail, but as someone who likes home stuff, hook us up a code. And then Akim.
Right. Hi. I'm Akim. I grew up in Malawi and South Africa. I came to Berlin in 2016, end of 2016. I am a product designer by background or training. I studied in London, and I currently run a startup called Reframed. We create eyewear products for what we call eyewear products for a diverse world, in the sense that most eyewear products are created around Caucasian nose profiles, and which means that more than 70% of the world is seen as irrelevant by an entire industry. So my partner and I decided to, let's say, subvert the industry and introduce products that look at ourselves initially as worthy of products being made for So our products range from custom eyewear for individuals, where we scan their faces with our mobile app, and we create the custom products for them. And also because we collect so much data from scans, we're able to offer eyewear insights to other eyewear brands. So if you're a brand, you could come to us, say, I'm trying to sell my products in Taiwan, for example. What are the average sizes in Taiwan? So we can give you sizes depending on, let's say, gender, age, race, geography, so to speak. We also sell products, of course, to retailers. So I think in that sense we are doing relatively okay. Of course, could be better, but we're also growing. And I think as we grow and as we transition as a company and as a brand, we try to facilitate the just remove friction from the process of finding correct fitting eyewear for more people. Yes, so I think that's fundamentally it. Maybe you just...
That's great. I went on your website because I actually need new glasses. Because like my glasses are always like slipping down my face. And then when I read about your mission, I was like, oh my gosh. I'd never really thought about it, right? That this is the reason. I thought it was just me. I was like, there must be something about my nose. And then I read and I was like, oh, okay, so maybe there are other people who have the same problem. So, I think that's interesting. I think even if you think about airport scanners, like every time I go into an airport, the scanner just goes crazy. But it's also the hair profile, right? The scanner's like, I can't read this. So it's quite interesting about the data, right, that you're sharing it. I think that's something that's super important. So thank you. So I'm gonna actually turn to the audience now to ask you a few questions. So before this event, I was super inspired. I just randomly told Kave, so I was like, Kave, I just created a survey because I just was really interested to find out what people's perceptions of Africa are, right? Because I think a lot of times when people say Africa, it just sounds like this big block. So I just wanted to find out and get some insights. So I put together 10 very simple questions, and I was laughing, traumatized, and shocked at some of the responses that I got. So I think now we're up to about 75 people that have filled in the survey, which is pretty decent, it's not bad. It's been out for about 36 hours. But I want to challenge you as an audience to answer a few questions just to see if you can guess. So just to give you some context, the profile of the people who answered, multiracial, there's a bit of an even distribution. So I would say about 70% of people are based in Europe. So Germany, Switzerland, the UK, which is obviously consistent with where my connections are, and then some people in Africa. So who wants to take a guess at the top 3 countries that people have visited in Africa?
Kenya.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Egypt is correct. But no, which one is number 1? Actually, I wanted number 1. No.
Morocco.
Who said South Africa? Yeah, head and shoulders above everybody. South Africa is the most visited from the survey results. Kenya was second, and Egypt was number. Ghana was not even there, girl. No, Ghana was there for people who are from Ghana. That I could see, because I could see that in the data. Okay. And then I also asked the question, who's the most famous African man that you know or have read of, dead or alive? Who came number 1?
Nelson Mandela.
Exactly. Like head and shoulders. But who do you think came second?
Barack Obama.
Is he even African? Oh my God! This is what people were doing. Guys, no. Oh, there are people claiming. No, I'm sorry. Kenya, he's American. No, so Mandela number 1, head and shoulders above everyone.
Dangote?
Yes, Dangote was number 2. Yeah. And then who wants to take a guess at who was number 3?
Johnny Cash.
No. No. He always wants to pass the exam. No, it wasn't. No. No. So the top word that came was beautiful.
What? Sorry?
Yeah, so this was the number 1 word. And what's the second word? This audience. No. So the second word was safari. That was the second one. And then who wants to take a guess at the third one? Yeah, hot. Yeah, so hot was yeah, it was good. And I was actually laughing because the fifth most known African man in the list was Robert Mugabe. I was like, okay, moving along. Cool, right? So if you haven't filled in the survey, it's on my LinkedIn, so please fill it in. Please don't be biased by the answers. And Barack Obama, just to clarify, is not African. Cool. Sorry, Gary, can we go to the questions in the presentation? Yeah, sorry. Cool. So I think you already answered a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your African heritage. So we've got Congo, we've got Morocco, and then Malawi with a dash of South Africa, right, in the mix. So, and I'll start with you, Rosette. So what actually inspired your journey into tech?
To be honest, I have never been tech-affine before, ever in my life. When I started working at Opera, I was really out of a need to get an internship for my bachelor. So I was very, very far away from the entire tech scene. But then luckily I did get the internship and I didn't really know what I would be doing, you know. Initially I wanted to go into the music industry at some point, and now I ended up in tech. Actually started off as a social media manager, and then after like 1.5 years or so, I was asked to do product marketing management. And what I thought was very interesting to me, or what was quite important to me, is that Opera in itself, we actually have quite a huge user base across Africa.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's around like over 100 million people that
Is there a reason
have
that opera
using
is so
Opera.
popular in Africa? Is there a specific reason?
Yeah, so like many years ago, still, when a lot of people were still on feature phones, Opera Mini was one of the browsers that would actually make the internet accessible, right? So often when I talk to people, they're like, yeah, Opera, and you said the same, right? Yeah, I used it when I was on my feature phone. And even today, I mean, we still have a super active user base, and something that I loved about the job going into tech was understanding that the product that we have is actually a part of people's everyday life, right? We don't really think about it, but it's really essential. And just hearing the stories, because some of the key markets that I was working on was actually Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa when I started. And it was quite inspiring to me to hear like stories of people like them saying, yeah, you know, I was using Opera Mini, and we have something that is called a speed dial, like a direct access to a library of books, which like some people used while they were studying. And you know, just hearing these stories, it was pretty amazing for me, and I was able to do some really cool campaigns. So I just stuck with the company, and today I feel like my role really is just to make sure that we have a different angle, because sometimes what happens, especially in tech companies, is that, you know, they might look at Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, which I'm just mentioning them because these are often the key markets. They will look at them, they will just think, okay, that's a huge user base, let's just try to go after them. But you have a bunch of, well, in my case, white executives as well, right? It is what it is, so let's name the dog by its name. I don't think you say it that way, but I mean, it's just super important for me to make sure that we see these markets in different angles, because often what happens is that also our developers, they look at it from this legacy perspective, you know, and what happens then is that you see a huge shift in the perception of the browser as well. So people are just saying, yeah, it's a feature phone browser, used to use it, I didn't even know they exist anymore.
Yeah.
So,
And I think something maybe that we'll also talk about is that that monolithic view and things not progressing because it's like, yeah, it's Africa, like we don't need to kind of make it better or keep improving. So I think we'll definitely come back to that. Zach, what inspired you?
Really nothing. It was so.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, was really very random how I ended up in tech. So I studied mathematics at the beginning, and then at some point I was like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna, like I didn't see a job with just studying mathematics. And I had in front of me different engineering fields. And yeah, I just felt a little bit more comfortable with some algorithms, and I said, okay, I'm gonna do tech. But the idea was like, I study tech and then I go do some master in management and I just do business. This is like what every single Moroccan wanted to do. They don't want to really build things, but they just want to manage people from day one. This is also the idea that I had in mind. But I did the first internship in Morocco. So during my studies, I had 3 internships that were really mandatory. And I said, okay, one I'm gonna do in Morocco, second in France, and third in another country, but I was already thinking about Germany. And in my first internship, I did it at Total in Morocco, and they used SAP. And they were looking at this German company like, it's like a software that was developed by God, like wow. Everyone was like, wow, this is like an amazing software. If you work for SAP, then you are the richest person in Morocco. And they were just talking about SAP like it's a dream company. So I said, hey, then probably I'm gonna work for SAP. And so when I finished my studies, I was like, do I wanna do management or I go work for this tech company? And I said, maybe I try the tech company. And again, the story of 6 years. So the plan was like just 2 years and I do some MBA or whatever. But then I worked for 6 years, mainly in tech. And then I ended up so deep in tech. But now, yeah, I went to my old dreams and just founding and doing business.
I always think it's so fascinating, especially with a company like SAP. I mean, their user interface is like horrendous,
Yeah.
right? But you know, when you're like, you know, like I know companies in Zim,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, why are you using this thing, you know? But it is that whole thing, like that perception, like, oh my gosh, it's SAP. And I'm just like, this is terrible. It's like, it's so over-engineered for maybe what they need, but it's like this is what we always, I think it's very deep in our subconscious about aspiring, but not for anything around us, but for these very far away things that, yeah, we're always reaching far, but yeah, that's really interesting. Akeem, what was your inspiration into tech?
Right. So I think probably similar in the sense that also really nothing, I suppose. I am a designer by background, as I said, and what I do is find any tool that I can get to achieve a particular goal, right? So if I have a project that needs some tech-related functions, I can either find someone to do something for me, or if I have time, I can learn to do something to achieve that particular goal. And I think that's how I find myself in the current position or predicament that I am in, that I use tech-enabled tools to achieve a particular end, but I wouldn't classify myself as being in tech as such. I think if anything, I'm more in the creative space where any tool that I can get to achieve a particular aim, I will go for that tool. So to speak.
But I mean, when you were talking about the product that you have, right, and sort of tech as an enabler, how responsible, powerful do you feel with all of this data? Like, how does that actually make you feel? I always wonder about people who are like, have these products that generate so much data and what you can do with that data. So, you know, for you, how do you sort of work with that or feel about that responsibility?
Well, I think the first thing is probably fear that you could, or someone could, let's say, take it or steal it from you. And I think fundamental to any business that has user content or user data is trust between you and your customers. And if you lose the data that you collect, then of course you're not going to have customers in the end. And also we do not, let's say, we do not store that data for an indefinite period of time. We have 30-day policy after which we have to delete the data. That's part of our policy. But we do draw insights from that data, and that we can keep. So I don't think I feel particularly powerful at all. If anything, I think it just gives me insight into, how to say, into what companies think is important, what their priority. And I think that's what I've seen with the data that we collect or the insights that we draw, and perhaps what I and my startup can do to make a difference with data that we have.
So Zach, just, because you're talking about your business, which is getting goods, sourcing goods from Africa and bringing them here. So how do you use data in this context of the business that you're running?
Again, maybe I surprise you. Really, in Africa, there is not so much data, and we would love to have data. Like when we are looking, for example, for suppliers. So we started by just trying to get a lot of suppliers. We started in Morocco, for example, and on the ministry level, there is some kind of data. If you just go down, then there is data that dates back to 10 years in the small cities. And then you ask them, hey, I saw this data online or whatever. Do you have okay, you say you have 2,000 artisans in the city. Do you have these 2,000 artisans? The person who did this thing left probably the Chamber of Commerce or the city. I think we suffer more for the lack of data in Africa, and it's the same in a lot of African countries. It's so hard to know, because we try to find artisans. It's so hard to know how many artisans are out there. So we just base everything on estimations. You find reports where they say, okay, 3% of population in Tunisia is working in artisanal. Then you find other just really random articles that say in Mali it's 30% of the population. You're like, okay, does it make sense or not? And you try to just kind of estimate to just know, okay, would we really have enough supply from Africa to feed the European market? On the other side, here in Europe, there is really tons of data. So we know how many retailers we are dealing with, what kind of products they are selling. And we are still not at the stage where we are collecting data. We have few transactions, but we're still far from having this big data to know, okay, what kind of products Europeans are buying from Africa.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on a holistic kind of scale. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. And Rosette, just sort of similar question to you. So I know you talked a little bit about, Opera being a very well-used browser in Africa. So in terms of the data, and then sort of what Opera does with that data, I know you said sometimes it's not so easy to get people to maybe dig into it. So what are because you're in product marketing, right?
Yes.
So how do you use data?
Yeah, so one of the biggest reports that I can actually think of that we have done, it was a data report. So we were asking our own users how much money they were actually spending on data on a daily basis. And data in South Africa is, how is it so crazy expensive?
Same in Zim.
shouldn't be like this. So, but what came out of it is actually that we were trying to work with some of the telcos, like the local telcos, to get deals so that if people are using Opera Mini, which actually has a data saver inside, that we can even offer them data packages. So I would say this is how we use data. For myself, actually, so that this is like one of the passion projects that I currently have, because I'm working on the crypto team, and we have the mission to bring like our crypto products to all of our users. This means across all products, which I think is very important, so that we don't just think about the people that sit in the EU, like in Europe or in the US. One thing that I want to do with the data that we're able to get, because we have such a huge user base, is also to get a better, maybe even global understanding of how is the crypto space being perceived across Africa, and what are the actual needs, what do people want to do with crypto, what are they interested in? Is it just that they do want to invest into Bitcoin, Ethereum? Are they interested in NFTs, right? Do they want to do something else? And actually, one thing that I found very interesting as I go to these conferences is that I get the chance to meet a lot of local founders, which is quite amazing. So, you know, one of the biggest problems is actually this on and off ramping. So buying NFTs locally with the local currency. And you know, when I talk to these people, it's usually quite interesting, because what you find is that usually if you use like Binance or, you know, these big chains, I don't know how much you guys are into crypto, but if you usually go with the general blockchains, you will often find people that have issues buying crypto, simply because their card is just being rejected or the bank rejects it. And I mean, some of the companies, they are really struggling to get in touch with local banks. And yeah, just, you know, I mean, I'm in a fortunate position that we have a huge user base, and we can really try to push these surveys and build a big database.
Yeah. I think this is also quite interesting, because I know that, I don't know, maybe other people from other African countries have different experience, but bank cards from Zimbabwe, because we have historical issues with sanctions, are very problematic online. So even to get a sort of a PayPal account or to use your card, so people are almost locked out of this like global sort of marketplace because of these sanctions. So yeah, I think it's also quite interesting around that being locked out, and then also not being able to participate in these conversations that we just have, you know, in Europe, in the US, quite casually. But yeah, a lot of people are actually being locked out, which is quite sad. Sorry, is Gary by the computer? Yes, just a few more slides. Next. Yeah, great. So we talked a little bit about data, but I think, you know, something that we've discussed with Kaveh, because I do some, you know, for a long time when I was working, I would just go to Zimbabwe, party, have a good time, see my family, and come back. I never really thought about connecting with anyone in terms of work, because I've never worked there. So I just was like, I don't have any connections. Like, why would I, you know, sort of do something? But about 3-4 years ago, I started thinking, you know, around how much a country actually invests in you as a child. So how much you actually take. And then I basically took all of this 19 years of investment, and it's, you know, the UK's benefited, Germany's benefited. But now I'm actually doing some work with companies in Zim, which is so fulfilling. So, I mean, I'll start with you, Zach. So, you know, how, through your company, do you feel like you're reconnecting and giving back after the SAP dream and all of that with Morocco and the continent at large?
Yeah, I mean, I also had a lot this question in mind, is like, how can I give back? Because I always kind of regret that I left and I'm having an awesome life here. And then I fly back to Morocco and I criticize everything. It's like, hey, this is not working. But I actually am one of these talents that probably the country invested a lot on, and I left. And at the very beginning it was tiny contributions, so whenever there was any event where I could speak and share my knowledge, I would just do it, and sometimes I would fly over for a weekend, like fly Saturday and Sunday, come back here, and just try to really share all the knowledge that I had in mind. But I also thought about scalability a lot because, yeah, you have limited weekends per year, and it's so hard to do that, or like to have really a meaningful impact if you just continue doing that. And I spent a lot of time thinking, okay, how can I really help Africa? Before focusing only on, I had two main topics that I could really, or like ways how I could help Africa. First, education, and second is like, okay, bring in money to people there. Education, I found it extremely complex for many reasons. And then I decided, okay, I can contribute from here, from my position here, with all the knowledge, the connections, whatever that I have here, by creating more opportunities for businesses there and by bringing more money basically to Africa. So the whole mission of Wanda is basically, yeah, kind of a return, 1000x return on investments from Morocco, but not only in Morocco, but in the rest of Africa. This is how I see it. Yeah.
We love to see it. And Akim?
Right. I don't know.
I love the honesty.
Right.
I really love it.
Cool. Good. Yeah. Well, it is. I think it is a bit of a tough issue. I think it's when one thinks about things, it's and the many problems that people across Africa face, and some of the problems that I've faced myself as well while I was much younger. I think it might be a bit overwhelming when you're one person and to be in a position to think that you can affect change, where many organizations and hundreds of billions of dollars have tried to do sort of just that, but have failed and seems to continue to do so. And I think maybe something that worked for me personally was just being able to, I don't know, go to school and get some sort of education. And when I was much younger, I was in a rural village in Malawi, and we herded cows, and so I think something that my greatest ambition in life was to be able to read, and that was probably it. And if I could read, then I'd be much happier. But through going to school and going to the next possible stage of either academic or professional achievement, I think I managed to some degree maybe elevate myself from this constant cycle of poverty, if you will. So if I were to think of something that maybe I could do to help or enable others, is probably facilitate some kind of education or better access to higher quality education. Primarily maybe in elementary school or kindergarten, so to speak. I think it's probably where if you have a good start or a good beginning, it's much easier to get somewhere. So I think maybe there. But of course, I'm not doing that yet. I would like, I hope I can live up to that, do something. And I think that is where I could make the most impact, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that because, you know, education really is, you know, if you think about home, it's a root, right? You know, if I think about even my own family, right? I always say that I'm like 1 degree of separation away from poverty because my parents lived in poverty, and now I'm sitting here. But this is what education can be, such a game changer. So even, and I remember I used to get so annoyed with those adverts when I was younger, like, oh, for $5 a month, you can send whoever to school. I was always like, no. But I didn't really appreciate it because I was in such a position of privilege. But as I've gotten older, I just think, yeah, you know, if I'm working in Berlin, yeah, why can't I send even one child to school. So now I send a few. So I think it's definitely, it's very, very, very enriching. Definitely, if you do it, it's really enriching. And Rosette, same question for you.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question, especially because, I'm working for cooperation, right? So what can you do? For me, what's important now, or what has become more important for me throughout the past years, is that I just realized maybe there's not a lot that I can do myself, but I kind of want to use my position of being in a global company to just recognize and pull in some of the talent that is here, right? That's what I would love to be my contribution, and I thought about it a lot, especially in the last 2 years. How can I actually do this? How to approach that, right? Because I didn't know, and I don't know. I feel like then coming in and trying to understand. Okay, I realize I can recruit agencies that I want to work with. We always need designers, freelancers, or whatever that work with us on certain projects. This is where I can actually make a decision and say, hey, instead of working with that person, I actually want to work with another person, right? And this is not only for Europe, but it's also like I want to actively be introduced to more companies across Africa, so that we can actually put the money that we earn here back into the continent. So I kind of see it that way, from a professional aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's quite powerful because, even if we think about, when companies put out tenders and things, we know what goes on at the top, right? So, the more you're at the table, the more you can have a say in, actually, I want to work with this company or this company. And we know it's not all fair, and the meritocracy is a joke. So we know that a lot of times when you really dig into it, those companies don't know the CEO or the whoever. So do your thing, girl.
Can I
Don't
say
feel
something just to top that off? And I think one of the conversations that I was actually also having with Kave was quite inspiring to me as well, because she mentioned, there's a lot of talent, and I always hear, there's not enough talent, It's like, there's not enough talent in Poland for engineers, and I'm like, wait, that's not true. You actually have a bunch of people, bunch of students, talented students, coming to Poland, coming to Berlin, that are really smart and bright, and we're not giving them the opportunity, so they just end up being stuck somewhere and not being recognized, right? So if I can help to see this talent and put them in front of the right people and take the first interview with them, and just prioritize them in the pipeline, of course, based on their actual skills, then that's what I want to do.
So now we're going to talk about Afrofuturism. How familiar are you with that? So we'll start with you, Rosette. How familiar are you with it?
Well, I read the definition. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert. I don't know, I read the definition. I'll leave it at that, right? I think it's open for interpretation a little bit on how you want to define it.
I think one thing that I find interesting is, the imagination, technology, future, and liberation. And we were talking about, lack of access to markets maybe because, your bank card and all it says. That whole liberation piece is so, it goes beyond just like, we're now an independent country, right? But we are super free to participate in whatever we want to participate in. But then it also goes back to what you were talking about, which is some infrastructure issues, right? Data is so expensive, etc. And we know the world is very digital now. So I think it's also got a lot to do with that. Like, how do we build up our infrastructure that we can participate as equal partners in the global sort of ecosystem?
All right, so I'm going to comment on that because one thing that I love about being in crypto is that the spirit of it all is that basically we are all the same, we all have the same chances, and it's all about collaboration, right? So, when I speak, for example, so there's this one founder whom I really like, he's in the art scene, he is one of the co-founders of African digital artist, and his mission is to bring more African artists, but also from the African diaspora, onto the NFT art scene. And I mean, if you look at it from the outside, really what's happening is that people in the NFT art space are making tons of money, like, let's face it, right? And who says that African artists shouldn't make the same amount of money? And the cool thing in Web3 is that if you have a floor price or the base price of an art, it doesn't really matter who the artist is. Either it's good or it's not good, right? And if it's then going to cost $6,000, it doesn't even matter where the artist is based, right? So this is something that I find really, really inspiring when it comes to like the crypto space in itself, and it's something that I really try to read into much more. Also from the music perspective, I mean, I can talk about this for hours probably, but just to give you some insight into that. So music NFTs are becoming more and more popular these days because of the entire issues with like publishing rights and not owning them. And I think it's super interesting to get more artists from across the globe onto this, because again, they will get a fair share of the actual money that is being distributed.
Yeah, very interesting. And Zach, do you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe more focusing on design and art, and how probably I would love to see maybe the future influenced by African design and art. I would love to see Germany more colorful.
We're trying.
Yeah, we need to try harder. I mean, if you really, and that's also something really I see Wanda can really contribute to it, is just there is like so much creativity that is still hidden in Africa, different designs, different colors, different inspirations, and if you look around, everything looks like an IKEA thingy. It's like everything is like almost the same design, and the world really needs a new wave of inspiration. And I do think that Africa is that wave of inspiration. It's not only in colors and designs and shapes. It's also in music. It's in a lot of things. And yeah, I do believe like in the next years, like African culture and art will somehow shape the world, and probably we won't see in 20 years from now only this sofa, but we will see other stuff, and hopefully Wanda contributes to that. And the same also applies in science and technology, and yeah, the world needs a different way of thinking. I always believe that the small person in a small village who spent basically all life just hand making, for example, carpets, they have solved certain problems in a completely different way, and if we just get the inspiration from them, probably the way they solved certain problems can inspire us to solve really even bigger problems. And there is like just so much inspiration that we can really learn, or we can probably have from African people, because they have spent a lot of time doing certain things and pretty much like in isolation. And we just need to give them the right platform to really bring their inspirations and inspire us in solving problems in science, in how we can use technology, in design, in pretty much like everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, the other day I can't remember, it's called Momax. It's like a home store. And I was just like, I could be in any, there's just no pizzazz, you know? But when I was in Zimbabwe, when you go, there's just so much. And every time I was like, oh, you know, why can't we export, you know? But when you get into the conversation, it's just back to like import taxes and this infrastructure. It's literally the infrastructure. but it's also the scale, right? So I think it's a catch-22 because to be able to sell here, you need to be producing at scale. And what I see, and I don't know if it's the same in other African countries, is producing at scale is very difficult. You know, raw materials, especially a country like Zimbabwe with hyperinflation. So, you know, it could be $2 today, it's $5 tomorrow. So it's also that, you know, I think a lot of things around infrastructure are what need a lot of investment. And I think it comes back to your point about data, right? Actually understanding who's doing what and where and at what scale. And only then can you have really targeted investment. So yeah, I love that. And Akeem, same question for you. You can read the definition again, it's okay.
Oh, right, thanks. So I think my thoughts on Afrofuturism, I think when I think of it, especially as the intersection of imagination, technology, and liberation, it is, I think, looking at a lot of science fiction content, you see a significant absence of, let's say, black people or people of African descent. And what is interesting about science fiction or speculative fiction is that you can imagine scenarios or societies in a way that is different to the way that society is growing or going about. And when we think of Afrofuturism, I think it's perhaps going to content such as the Black Panther movies, is that we can imagine a scenario of an African-centric society where perhaps it's not, where everything that we define as African or black is not defined or shaped by colonial historical, let's say, perspectives or narratives. So with regards to my own work, that is what I try to do with currently with my startup is to take people that are in the at the periphery, so black people, at this in our industry, black people or with Down syndrome, people of Asian descent, is to move them from the periphery to the center. And a lot of these things can be facilitated by exactly imagination, technology. And in so doing, I think it allows us to create products for people that mainstream industry are not willing, or they're definitely able to do it if they want. But I think we can through speculative fiction and speculating in the sense of what if certain conditions were met, what kind of society would we live in. I think it definitely can liberate. Let's say I think it can liberate all of us to imagine how society might evolve. And perhaps a better example would be if you ask children, what do you want to become when you grow up, and most of the answers are based on things that they see around them, professions that they see around them. So they would say Superman, Batman, a YouTuber, or such and such. And when you think of all these things, and you often see, I think maybe 5 years ago there was a high degree or absence of people of color in all these, let's say, archetypes, right? But with speculative fiction, you could have, let's say, a black Spider-Man, even though in reality of let's say the Marvel universe there isn't, or there is a black Spider-Man at some point. But you can create characters that are of African descent or people of color that children can also look up to. So I think it's can be liberating in that respect.
You know, I really love the point you made about something going from the imagination to the mainstream, you know, because that's actually what it's about. And I think if you are always on the periphery, on the outside, it really does take someone very visionary to be like, you know what, you could be here. Like, you actually could be mainstream. You know, like I was talking about the glasses, right? So I think even what you're doing, I don't think there are many people who wear glasses who would have really thought that deeply about, maybe this is just not for me, and I could have a different reality. I could have glasses that will just sit on my nose and I won't have problems. And I think it takes, you know, people like all of you to imagine that, you know, even someone like you're saying, Zach, someone making something in Africa to be like, oh, actually, you know what, if I had some investment, and maybe if the government would, you know, invest or whatever, producing at scale. Same thing with, you know, what you were talking about, you know, talking to companies, partnering with African companies with opera, right? And really bringing them into the mainstream. Because I think we're always kind of want to participate, but always waiting, we need to be invited, right? So I think it really takes a lot of imagination, a critical mass of imagination, you know, because I even remember how I felt watching Black Panther. And I was, how many years ago was that? I can't remember. 4 years ago, yeah. So, you know, I was 35. I never really thought about the fact that I'd never really seen a black superhero. Like, it never was in my head. But after watching that and, you know, seeing my nephews and nieces, their reaction to it, I was just like, wow, it's, you know what I mean? It was really, really, really impactful. So, you know, I really like that about from imagination to mainstream. Cool. So Zach, you said something that really resonated with me about when you go back and you think, yeah, no, you know better about than people who are at home. I think many of us, when we go home, we're just like, oh, so inefficient, or, you know, why can't they do it like in the UK, or why can't they do it like in Germany? And I get humbled quite often to say, like, you know, like my family always like, don't bring your European tendencies here. So, you know, how do you, Zach, balance that? I want to tell you how to do something with actually let's collaborate and actually learn from each other. Because I think there's always a danger as a diaspora in that, you know, you live in these countries and you kind of soak up certain ways of doing things, and then you start to look at home and think like they're doing it all wrong, and that's why it's messed up.
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really extremely hard. I mean, by the end, I'm still human, and I go there, and I still have every now and then this reflex of, like, I think I acquired a little bit of this German arrogance, where you go there and we're like, yeah, coming from Germany, we do it better. You know, we have processes, we're on time, na na na. So I also play this role really when I'm in Morocco, and even I try to really just be a listener and stuff. It keeps coming like, hey, this is how we do things in Germany. We start on time, we finish on time, we respect, we plan. But every time I go back, at least I can talk about Morocco, like I go there, I really get surprised, because I really, in my mind, Morocco, or like this, the image of Morocco is like this snapshot of when I really left, and I always think, or like most of my stereotypes are really about like 13 years ago. Of course, I see new buildings, maybe nice people dressing a little bit more fancy, but I still think that the habits and everything they do is like from 13 years ago, and they keep really surprising me. Like I'm like, okay, you know, the German way showing on time, and they are on time as well, and I'm like, oh wow. Or like the way they do business, or sometimes really people really know about certain technologies that we don't even know about here, and they really keep surprising me. So I try the best to really stay open and listen to people, hear how they are doing really things, and yeah, treat with lot of respect, because it's not like Morocco is not really stuck, or like any African country is not really stuck in 20 years ago. Like a lot of things have changed in between, and we need to kind of understand that here. But I'm really struggling with that balance. I don't think there is a balance. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head about, especially if you leave home at a certain time, it is that snapshot that you have, because you've not experienced the country sort of progressing and, you know, moving forward, right? So you're kind of, I think it's almost like every time you go back, you regress. And then it takes you a bit of time to be like, oh, they're actually more advanced in quite a few things than, you know. And I think, you know, before we move to other speakers, I think, imagine if we feel like that. Imagine people who've like never been, and then so imagine that snapshot that they have of whatever they've been fed over many, many years. It's actually quite daunting to think about, you know, changing that, right? And how do you change that? I think this is a big question. I don't know if Akeem or Rosette, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd love to add something. So for me personally, I would never dare to assume that I know anything, because I never worked in Congo, ever, right? I never worked in Nigeria, I've never worked in Ghana, I've never worked in South Africa, right? So who am I to kind of be in the position to tell anyone how to do business, right? And I think this is something where I also have to humble myself a lot. Because often, like you were saying, right, you're thinking, okay, so I know how it's done here, so I know better, but in reality, you don't know anything, right? So I think it's, what's important is just to, you know, kind of jump into the cold water and trust that you have really good partnerships set up, and that you are able to collaborate with the people depending on the project that you're having.
Yeah, I love that. I love the humility. Okay, no problem. Okay, so just another question to the audience is, I know I asked you about the most famous African man. Who do you think came up as the three most famous African women? No, number one. Like, who do you think was number one? Oprah. Okay, yeah. And who do you think was number two? Yeah, who said Winnie Mandela? Yeah, she came out, yeah, she was number two. And number three? Miriam Makeba and Chimamanda were tied on three. So the thing that really disturbed me about that was because I asked the same question. I said, you know, who's the most famous African man? The only outlier I got was Martin Luther King. I was just like, okay, this I can't. But the other 69 people named an African man, whether it was Nelson Mandela, Kofi Annan, Robert Mugabe, RIP, and other African men. But when it came to African women, there were a lot of people saying Oprah. Aretha Franklin was there. No, I would have been so mad if she was there. But there were a lot of Black American women who were being mixed in. They are like from Africa. Someone put Naomi Campbell, and I was like, she's Caribbean. Okay. So my question to you is, and what disturbed me about that was that we already know that, you know, Black women, it's tricky, but there's this whole thing of like being conflated with yet another group, right? So even as African women, we don't seem to stand out. And what was interesting was the people commenting why they put Winnie Mandela, it was all problematic comments, right? And I know Winnie Mandela is a very complicated woman, but she's got a very rich story behind her. So it's like she came up tops not for positive reasons, but the men, my goodness, oh my God, Nelson, whatever, he was great, but Nelson Mandela wouldn't have been Nelson Mandela without Winnie Mandela, you know, and she compromised a lot of herself. So my question to you is, how through everything that you're doing, do you think about or plan to uplift the African woman?
So at the beginning of our project, we had a female co-founder, a Black lady, and we thought that it was important for us to have someone like her, and we enjoyed her contribution to our startup. But at some point we had, let's say, differences on how things were to operate or function within our business. So we came to some sort of, I guess, mutual, or I don't know if it's mutual, but some kind of separation. Not because she was female that we separated from her, but there were some, at least on her part, some accusations of sexism, and it, of course, in situations like that, of course, you want to be, the initial reaction, you want to be defensive, and you don't want to say, like, well, I'm not a sexist person because of X, Y, Z. But also, at least for me personally, I asked myself, is it possible that I could do something that is sexist? So I thought, yes, of course I can do something. I might have done something sexist, perhaps, but could I possibly learn from it? And I thought myself, yes, of course I can learn from something that I may have done or my partner may have done, and maybe grow from it, so that we don't necessarily repeat the same mistake, in the sense that you felt excluded or not valued, or at least you felt that I valued the other partner's opinion more than I did her opinion. So in terms of how do we, let's say, value, or what difference do we make to Black women or African women with our startup? At least our current commitment is that the next major person that we bring to the team would be a female again, mainly because we are currently just men. And this constantly comes up between me and my partner, and also some other people that we work with. And also, given that I think 60% of either our customers or people that interact with our products are female, it is definitely incumbent upon us as a brand, as a business, to have that reflected in, let's say, internally as well. And we try to claim that we are an inclusive brand, and if that inclusion is not reflected, then of course we are hypocritical to that respect. On a technical side of things, especially if we look at facial scanning, I think Black women or African women are disproportionately affected, misidentified, either identified as men, while they're women because of the data set that does not include a lot of female, let's say African women as training subjects. So at least what we're trying to do, and we hope we can do, is to include more Black women in the facial scans that we collect, so that we can use that data sets to have a, how do you say, to have a better representation, or to also be able to train some of our models that are, so that the results that we can get, or the insights that we can build, are more accurate. I understand that is not a material benefit on the women outside of our startup directly, but it improves product offering, which hopefully also means that our customers get better products.
Thank you, and I really appreciate, you sharing that story, especially where you said, even though you may not have thought that you are open to learning that maybe there was something that was sexist that happened, because I think a lot of times, people rush to deny something. I think a lot of women suffer from that, right? People just denying your experience, which ends up in people like not reporting it. So, I think it's great that you shared that with us so openly. And yeah, if you need someone to measure. And Zach, same question for you.
Yeah, before talking about what we do exactly at Wanda, I do think in general, like, Africa and Africans need a lot of stories, and African women also need a lot of stories, like stories of inspiring idols. They need to see an African woman super successful so that they really can believe, okay, we can also do it. They need to see women in different positions super successful so that they really get this inspiration. So it goes from maybe imagination or like a story into, hey, I believe I can also be the thing. So I would love to, in general, like just encourage and share more stories. Like stories are really super powerful, and just telling the story of, hey, this African woman made it and this is how she made it, and just tell the story, it can inspire like really a lot of women in Africa. So I would love to contribute and just share more of these stories if you know any stories. But what we do at Wanda in particular, we love to onboard like suppliers that are women. So we have this in the agenda. One of the co-founders is also like a woman, and she also cares about that a lot. I do care about that a lot. So we make sure that we work with teams that are really suppliers that are fully women. But we have a funny story actually here. We onboarded one, and it was like a beautiful story of all women. And at some point we checked the website, and they had the team picture. It was 100% men, and yeah, it was like a shock for us because we were like, because when we had the first call with them, it was the first contact was with the women, and then we asked them, and then they say, yeah, it's like 100% women, and we wrote the story, the description of this brand as like, okay, this brand is like 100% women, but then when we did some due diligence, we found on their website that it's like at least they had a picture 100% men. We're like, okay, maybe they have some women, but at least clearly it's not 100% women. So sometimes it's also used for marketing, like certain brands, they just say, yeah, we have women in this and this and this position, but they know it's a story that sells, so they just use it for marketing. We try our best to, yeah, to investigate and see if these people are really serious or it's just like a marketing story. And then apart from the suppliers, like internally, the first hire we have in Morocco, basically person doing fulfillments, going and packing, like picking all the products and then packing them and then bringing them to the shipping, and then basically shipping them to Europe is actually a woman. So that's the first hire that we had there, and she's just amazing. She knows how to talk to suppliers, she knows how to pack, and we actually even didn't care if she is like a woman or or a man. She was just perfect for the job. She knows how to do it, and we onboarded her. So we try to hire also like women in all kind of positions. We don't care.
Point you made when you started about stories of African women, because there are actually a lot of prominent African women on the continent in government. They're actually very well represented. So for example, the Director General of the World Trade Organization is Nigerian. We had Ellen Sirleaf, who was the president of Liberia. There was, oh God, and I don't want to refer to as Jacob Zuma's wife, Nkosazana. Oh my God, yeah. Nkosazana Zuma, she was the Minister of Health. So for me, I think the stories are there, but I think they just don't make it. I think also what I think young women see is the flack these women get for any little thing they do. You know, Nkosazana Zuma is super intelligent, but the main thing she's known for, which I did, which I feel terrible about, is Jacob Zuma's wife. But this woman is such an accomplished health professional, but she's tied to, her identity's tied to this guy who's a bit of a mess, like Jacob Zuma. And then even if I look at the Director General of the World Trade Organization, you know, her getting into that position, it was so controversial. So I think there's also that thing about how people receive those stories and people's reaction to these African women. And I think sometimes young women just think like, I really do not want to be put in that position where I'm attacked. Because, you know, for example, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, I don't know how she managed that season in her life, but it was really terrible the way she was treated, but she eventually got the position. So I think the stories are there, but I think we also all have a greater responsibility to almost challenge when people start trashing these women for all sorts of silly reasons. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point. Rosette, to an African woman.
Yeah. Yeah, so how do I do that, right? What to say? I think for me, something that I always get excited about is actually when I'm involved again in like in the job listings and just hiring talent. It's not my main job, but I still do it all the time. So I get excited when people just start applying, right? Like I want to see more people like you. Like we're actually hiring for product manager right now, and I was like, dang it. But we already have a product lead, right? So yeah, I just want to see more women in general in our teams, right? And I mean, we're hiring for so many different roles, and it's not to be an advertising platform for Opera right now, but
Oh, you can. Feel free.
yeah, but you know, I mean, I want to see more female engineers, right, with that background. I want to see that. I want to see more people. Like one thing that we're addressing all the time is we don't have enough like women in leadership, right? Not even black women. Like I feel like a unicorn sometimes, right?
You
So
are.
I want to have more people and more women especially to join our company because I feel like we can make a really huge impact, and I want to see more applications coming in. And you know, sometimes even for myself it's a little bit weird sitting in this room with tons of male guys, like with guys. And then I'm also like, the thing is, sometimes you think, okay, you know, I don't want to be, like you were saying, I don't want to be that difficult woman that addresses things, but really you have to get over it in a way. And if someone is going to complain, I mean, what are they complaining about, right? I'm doing my job and I have to do it right, so I have the right to say something as well. But again, when it comes to me, I just want to see more people apply, more women apply for senior positions. And my contribution to that is, again, taking the first interviews, maybe not prioritizing you right away, but I will take the first interviews and I will put you on this, like I will put you in front of the pipeline. And I want to make sure, you know, that these applications do not go missing, because it's such a shame.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing about, tech that, because I work in tech, that freaks me out, that I feel like people don't worry about enough, is if a group is overrepresented in building a product, that product will reflect that group. And the more we are on the outside, we can complain, but we have to get in and play. So if we actually want products that are more suited to us, like what you're doing and, you know, all the stuff that you're all doing, we have to actually get in and play. But it's also about how do we share all of these type of tech roles with young people as well, to get them into tech. Because I'm sure if you ask most people, it's like, nowadays, I mean, when I was young, it was like doctor, lawyer. You know, now when I ask my niece and nephews, they want to be influencers. I'm just like, oh my God, no. But it is very important, and for me, it really is very, very worrying, because these products represent the people who build them. It's just the truth, and it's human nature. So if we want change, we actually have to do it. We have to push for it ourselves.
Yeah.
So
can I add something to that?
Please.
And I think it even goes, I mean, of course, this is like a tech event, but we have to think outside of that, right? We were having a conversation about investors, right? Like, let's face it, we cannot all be founders in a way. I would love to be. But then again, it's super important that we're just sitting inside of these structures so that we can actually push our own projects and the founders and whatever is coming out, because essentially what happens otherwise is that at some point, like, you're getting second place, right? Which is horrible, just because of certain reasons. I don't know if I should, if I should mention. I probably can, right? So you might have, I like the name you were saying, a Berthold, that is getting the first prize, and he's getting huge funding, right? And I feel like one thing that we don't have, and we were discussing it, is we don't have enough representation in a lot of the decision rooms. And this is definitely something that I want to, in a way, contribute to, and I want to change.
So Zach and Akim, when you have your board for your companies, there are board members right here. Cool. So thank you all very much. That was really, yeah, very, very inspiring. I'll be getting some glasses. I'll be looking for some stuff. At least talk to you about opera. But now I'm going to open up to the audience if anyone has any questions. Because I know you're all dying to eat. So does anyone have any questions? You have to shout.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Frankson. I am a product manager at Ionos, it's a cloud computing company. Back to the topic about women in tech, because I was at an event for AWS some months ago, some days ago actually, and it was like, for every 100 men you see one woman. And at the how you know it's a tech event for men, it's like you go to pee, and the queue for men was like crazy long. And for women, it's just empty. And then I think, and I have been in tech for a while now, although I moved from healthcare to IT. So I'm a trained doctor, but I had to change to IT. And I have just seen the lack of women in my company. At the C-level, I think we have only one woman, and she's white. And having spoken to some women around me, I have seen the common pattern of the lack of self-belief, of thinking, I don't deserve this. I don't want to feel the attack. And I think this comes from either your exposure to certain things in society, not being appreciated, or the feeling of not being like you are worthy enough of certain positions. And that for me, I have seen women who got an interview and really cut themselves short of the pay and the role they were deserving of. And I think, and I have tried to tell them, just ask for it. If you don't ask for it, they won't give it to you. And I'm thinking, how do we find a way to change this mindset of enabling women to feel like they deserve to ask for more than they deserve, or what is on the table? And I think if we can tweak this mindset, then I think there is a bit more flexibility to enabling women climb higher in the ranking. And I believe, although men are still out there, but if you don't ask for it, then they won't give it to you.
Can I add to that? Just very quickly. I think another reason why we do not have this conversation is because we do not openly talk about how much we earn. So I had a conversation with a friend, and she asked me how much I earned, and I told her. And she was like, how are you earning so much? Well, how do you earn what you earn? And I was like, well, how much do you earn? And she told me. And I was like, well, during your 1 year review, you have to ask for more. She didn't know how much she had to ask for. That was just it. So I think the more we talk about it, yeah, the more we know how much we deserve, how much we should earn, and others will know how much to ask for as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think my quick contribution to this one is, you know, we always tend to look quite far away to answer questions, and very late in the day in someone's life. So we want to solve problems when someone is in their 30s, right? When they should be going to leadership. But what we can do as a society is to treat young girls and young boys the same. Because that's actually where it starts. That's actually where it starts. And until society changes and treats children, whether it's a boy or a girl, the same, there's always going to be that issue. So, you know, when we were growing up, it was like, you know, my brother could go out a bit later or whatever. So he had different freedoms. And I would say my parents are, you know, pretty, you know, they're strict African parents, but they were progressive. But even they had that tendency in them. So it's also about, you know, within your family, you can also, you know, when you see stuff happening with the women in your family, you are in a very privileged and powerful position to make sure that you are an ally, because I think we tend to turn a blind eye to what's happening very close to us, and we want to solve the problems that are far away. So that's my challenge to you.
Unfortunately, I have mostly men around me.
But you should be influencing them.
I am trying, and the challenge is also that the women around me are still having this lower mindset of I don't deserve it, and they kind of transfer this mindset to the people around them. So it's like a chain reaction.
faction, so it's hard to be the only alien in the group of people who you're fighting against. So it's challenging,
but you're doing it. Keep doing it.
I'd like to jump in quickly. So I don't know if you guys have had the chance to read Tiffany Haddish's book, The Last Black Unicorn, but she has a line that I'm going to paraphrase because we're in a polite event. But she said she asked for money like she's an Australian man with a pink wee-wee. So maybe most African women, we should start thinking that we're Australian men with a pink wee-wee when we're in these negotiations and ask for the money we deserve and the position we deserve.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just add to this topic of recruiting in general, I have interviewed like a lot of people when I was at SAP in my first startup and even now, and always I really noticed this thing when a woman knows 80 or 70% about certain topic, they remove it from the resume because they're not super confident that they are really expert in that topic. So if they speak 70% or like they have an 8 Spanish, they don't really mention it even, or like any other skill. When men, they speak A1 Spanish, they really write it. They do really write it on the resume, and then you really have on the. And I interviewed like a lot, and when you go through the resume, like men, you will have like tons of skills. Like I'm expert here, 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 but then the reality is like probably less than that. And then in women, it's really in general, it's like above that. So you find the resume, and even they put certain skills and they really know the skills, but still you talk to them, they're like, yeah, I'm not really super expert here. I need to still learn a little bit about it. I'm not super proficient. And the skills that they know just a little bit, they remove. And I got also this remark because in one of my resumes I had German and my German sucks, and then I showed it to another like female, and she was like, hey, but your German is not good. But I was like, yeah, I can understand basics. and this is really when it started hitting me. So yeah, I really love recruiting women because they usually really over deliver. And yeah, man, there is really a lot of confidence, but it's a little bit below what they claim at the very beginning. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi. It's great to hear you all talking about how you love recruiting women, and I'm just thinking about CJ's comment about we try to fix situations when people are much older, like when they're 30. So when the resumes are coming to you, then you're trying to look and see, are there women here, are there black people here? They may try to foreground that, they may make sure that they don't get pushed to the bottom or just discarded. I'm curious to hear from the panel what they're doing now or what they can imagine some steps towards that would be.
Yeah, I can just add here. I have a problem even since I was working at SAP that women are hired just for marketing, just to show that the company is really diverse and stuff. Yeah, but you really go deep inside the company and you're like, okay, what are they doing? Which roles? How much money are they really paid and stuff? And these statistics usually really suck. They just hire for diversity, and I don't like that, and I don't want to do that like in any of the companies I build. I really want that they do real job. So I'm not hiring for the picture, and we don't want to just hire a bunch of students that are just doing some communication and say 50% of Wanda is female. I want that they really do other jobs, and I think people, when they report about certain company, they should really look into these numbers. Okay, what are they doing exactly in this company, and how much money are they really getting paid? I try to do it from my side, and I would love that also like more companies share a little bit more data about that, because I think this is what really matters. Yeah.
Well, I think one approach perhaps that I've seen work for some of the companies that, at least whose founders I know, is the internship program. So they bring in younger people at very entry level, or sometimes even lower than entry. So they do an internship, and later on, I think they've developed a relationship with the companies and eventually end up working at the same companies as well. And I think this is definitely a process that has proven to work, and you can definitely bring in people much early on into, I don't know about SAP, I cannot speak for them, but for us, I think such an approach would definitely be a critical way forward, because one, you have an exposure to specific expertise, but you also have guidance from someone who has experience before. As to bringing in particularly women, let's say interns into a startup, or including our own, I think what we are looking for at the moment is head of development, and I guess this is a position that is stereotypically associated with male, let's say, just men in general. But as I said earlier, that our next hire will be a female, and for us, having both this head of development being female, I think would be a good testament internally for ourselves, but also it's not really so much a show of trust, because I think it's also not up to us as men or startup to say we are giving you sort of recognition or validating your existence as such. Of course, we're hiring such a person because they have the relevant skill sets, and they'll perform in their position regardless whether they were male or female. But I think it's just also good to have let's say the deliberation that you do want to make sure that you don't have blind spots in your processes, and that if you are, or if you claim to be an inclusive startup, or at least if you do claim that your products are inclusive, perhaps your executive body should also reflect that. So at least that's what we try to do.
I really like that you brought up internships, because like my personal story as well started with an internship actually, because I wasn't in tech, not even interested, right? I knew Chrome, I knew Safari, that's pretty much it. Like seriously, I was kind of blind to the entire browser space, and so for me, through an internship, I just learned quite a bit, right? So being someone that is not within the space, there was no room for me to be very, very confident about it, right? I mean, I'm working in marketing, so you have to bring a certain skill set in terms of communication, but when you're an engineer, it's a different conversation, right? But what I like about internships in general, because I also believe in it quite a lot, is that one thing that we do is that we really try to bring in people and get them like started from the first day on, so that they're actually being integrated into the team right away, that they're not doing some weird, bringing us coffee or something like that, but they're actually being part of the project. And I truly believe that you can learn from actually doing something and not just learning the theory, and that you can really progress yourself. Like for me as well, going from a social media manager into product marketing, I didn't have the skill set to do product marketing at all. So I had to learn everything myself and kind of prove myself, right? And kind of going back to what you were saying, I didn't feel super confident, and I doubted myself a lot because I didn't know how to write a media plan, I didn't know how to evaluate it, but I kind of just had to trust myself. And I think it's like, again, going a little bit what you were saying about payments, because I don't think I touched base on it. It is actually quite valuable, you know, to just have these conversations with your colleagues, with some of your female friends, and just continue having that, even though you might think that they don't necessarily, like, they're not necessarily directly saying, okay, so tomorrow I'm gonna go in and ask for more, but you know, it will trigger this thought of, maybe I am allowed to ask for more, maybe I do deserve this position, right? And yeah, it's all about like trusting yourself, but I think that internships are the best way to get started in tech, actually, especially if you have little experience. And this is the way that we try to get more people into our company.
Yeah, just 1 second. So I think, so Nancy, to your question, I think the other issue is that the education system itself has not progressed. So it needs to also be that the government sees the value in integrating these real life experiences into the learning experience. So it's still very academic, so it's still very much until you are at this stage, then you can go into a company. And I think it's also a lot to do with the teachers themselves not really having been in industry or having these experiences, so they don't necessarily see the value of maybe you know, a 12-year-old going to spend a week with an engineer, or they just don't see the value that it's very, very bookish and very academic. And I speak to the president of the German Startups Association, and I brought this up. I brought up the learning thing, and I also brought up the thing around maternity leave. And he was just saying to me, like, you know, the list of things they're trying to fight at a government level, at a policy level, is the whole thing around like founding a company. So to them, that's the most important thing right now, is making it easier to found a company in Germany. And then all these other things are sort of towards the bottom. So I think the school system needs to kind of be, not broken, but it needs to be rejigged so that they actually see the value in that.
To add to your point about, I think your question was targeting the people at the front, but I would like to also encourage us sitting here that if you are in a company and there are people there working, I think it helps. I think at our company, what we do is we have what we call Girls Who Code. So we simply encourage the employees to bring nieces, if they have friends who have girls, to bring them together at a very young age, to expose them to coding, to computer, to things like that.
That's great.
It must not be a black girl, it can be a white. I think you have to play the game to win. If you begin with the white girl, then slowly it would morph to be more diverse, and I think we can't leave the game to the guys up there to decide every time. We can try to be a bit more proactive and bring up ideas, try and break the chain, you know. It must not be the guys in front or out there who are always trying to change things. I think if we try to be a bit more proactive, we can try to make things work to our own favor. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we have time for one more question before people beat me up.
I'll be very quick. So hi, my name is Esther. I'm from London. I'm here on holiday and saw this event and wanted to come because I did a lot of work in Afrofuturism, but from an art history perspective when I was at school. And it's so, well, university, it's so fascinating to me to see how big this idea has come, and the whole idea that if you look into the future, will black people be there, and what way will they be there? And also how we as black people and Africans have to step out of reality, go live in this imaginary space, because what we see before us and what we have and the histories we have are not leading to a future that's positive in any way. So we are constantly stepping out of reality into imagination to then drag back the futures, better futures that we imagine for ourselves. And I guess my question really is to Zach about this issue of data collection, because I've since sort of started moving into data analytics and just trying to understand how do you practically get these data sets that you need to be able to create that better, more specifically better, not estimated, a sort of reality that will achieve the aims that you're working on?
We're really just experimenting and learning. Right now we just talk to governments. We try to find someone who can really introduce us to someone in the government to get data. And very concretely, we go to the ambassadors here in Berlin. They are super accessible, and through them, then we ask for recommendation, then we talk to these governments. And when you are within the ministry, somehow you can get some kind of data because they have some kind of data. This is how we are getting data, or like this worked for us right now. And then we will see how it will kind of evolve with different countries, but we will eventually also have data because we are onboarding these suppliers, we already collect a lot of information about them. Probably in the future we have more data than these governments because we know, we know literally where these people are. We had like a very funny story in Morocco, or sad, or whatever you can call it, where we had certain data. It came from like the local chamber of commerce, and we were looking for one supplier. We drove for 2 hours, and then we didn't find anything. It was just deserts, and there was no one you can even ask. Like there was nothing, and Google Maps said, okay, the address is really here. There wasn't even a bird you can ask, like nothing. So yeah, we have certain data, but we really treat it super carefully, I think in general data has a very negative connotation, but in the case of Africa, it's so positive to have data. We really need a lot of data in Africa. Like if we don't know which products are produced where, how many people are producing them. Everything is just like an estimation from some UN reports. We would love to have really more data about Africa.
Okay, really last.
Okay, in general.
Oh, I just realized, sorry.
It's not a question, but rather a comment. I mean, we all come from Africa and we know how Africa is. I would say probably there is data, and probably there are people who know where these traders are, but the fact that most government are taxing even the smallest businesses, therefore these businesses are not registering their companies or their small businesses to the government. But if you go with local organizations that do not need to report to the government, then you will find this data. I'll say I'm working in the data space, and I've collected data, the state data in Africa. So I never use the government institution. If at all you can get data away from the government institution, try that, then you'll get your data.
I mean, it's true. So you have like a lot of local NGOs and even local people. Like you ask them, but I mean, if you go to a country, like where do you even start? You need to find these NGOs, and again, there is no data about these NGOs. So you just and we did that. We really went and we did a lot of groundwork, and we're like, okay, this is because we didn't want to just get the suppliers from the government. We were like, okay, let's try other ways and do some groundwork. And we spent like 3 weeks, like crazy in the country, jumping from one to the other. It's a huge. You need a lot of time.
Start with African Ferrari.
Yeah, I'm meeting them on Saturday. But yeah, we also talk to them. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. First off, thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Like, it has been very insightful, everything you all spoke about. First off, I'm here, job hunting technically. But aside that, I feel like we should have like workspaces that allow, I would say, strong African women to actually explore and thrive. I'm actually a facility manager currently. Well, still job hunting, yes, thank you. But I was actually racially profiled at work, and it was, I would really not want to say the words here because it was really, really dark, very dark. Dating back to slavery and why colored people should be cleaners and not managers. So not having a workspace that is safe enough for us to be able to explore and shine and be the strong people that we are supposed to be technically actually really shrinks us a lot. And then we do not want to, like, raise our heads high, especially in a space where 90% of our colleagues or staff members are male, and then they feel already intimidated when you're coming to create change and create impact, and that's already really, really challenging and scary for them. And hence, I got those kind of threats, and that's why I really, really want to change is from that space to somewhere else where I can be allowed to bring in my opinions, shine, do the best I can, and still bring about positivity and growth for the organization. Also for the speakers, I came here in 2019, October, to study, and then I remember how it used to be back home, where girls are asked to just go and wash the dishes and go home. We are just subjected to childbearing and marriage. We are not allowed to think outside of the box. And then I was luckily here, and then I'm seeing that we women, we have a voice, we can stand, we believe in something, and we know what we want when we want them. And then I started this really, really small startup that actually educates, allows the African rural child, girl child, to access education. We just have about 10 girls at the moment. So when she asked you questions about how you'd want to impact Africa with female and then with education, everything just ding, ding, ding in my head. So I think, like, with strong founders like you, with African founders like you, I feel like investing in such enterprise, educating the girl child, the African girl child from the grassroots, would actually even help us have more engineers and more people in technology. Right now, with the way things are going, I want to do a career switch. There should be no age barrier. We can do whatever we want to do when we put our minds to it. So that's why internship is also really good for women of color and all. But we can catch them at the grassroots and really, really now start instilling technology into them. And then really, like what she said about the future, we having colored people, colored women in the technology world. If we start now to actually curb all of that, I'm sure we'll be able to do that. And one last thing, I think it comes from the environment and culture. I remember one time, like about 3 weeks ago, my team went in Nigeria, my friends, I called them my teams. And then they went to a village to actually help tell the woman that please don't do anything, would actually help her with books, school, and she'd be able to go to school, because we started with public schools because they're not very pricey. I'm still trying to find my footings. So, and the woman said no, that she wasn't going to give us her girl child because she's supposed to be her father was owing someone before he passed, and the girl is supposed to, she's supposed to marry her off to be able to pay the debt. And we're like, no, please, just give it to us, give her to us, sorry. And all we just need for you to do is wake her in the morning and send her off to school. We'll pay the fees and then her books and textbooks. But she still insisted no, that the man was going to give her a bag of rice, tin tomatoes, meat, and then she's going to be paid off as a price. So I feel like when we continue to talk to these people, reach out to the communities, and reach out to these women that think girls are prices to be paid, or like we shouldn't go to school or something, or we should just be in the kitchen and then the childbearing positions. I feel like one step at a time we can be able to curb and eradicate poverty, malnutrition, lack of education in a very, very, very long term. Thank you.
Wow. Please share the name of your, please share the name. Yeah, please share the name. because I think everybody will be very interested. So I think now it's left for me to say thank you to the three of you. It's been a really great conversation. I hope that we can network. I will definitely be buying new glasses, so I'll definitely be doing that. But I think one thing that I definitely want to emphasize is that we're not all sitting here together by chance. And Kawe, please stand. So I think when we talk about going from imagination to reality, I think Kawe really embodies that. Because, you know, Kawe is from Congo, but came here via South Africa and started BlackinTechBerlin. And that was just from her own experience, feeling like there must be others, and I want to create that space. And I think there's a lot that we can all do to make Black in Tech and Talent Diverse even stronger. You know, we're talking about recruiting, there's Talent Diverse, and also just all the people that we know to join, because the more of us they are, the more of us will be screening CVs, the more of us will be able to push for people to be promoted. So Kawe, I want to say thank you. You inspire me all the time. I always look forward to our weekly calls and our WhatsApp messages, because I think you don't realize, but what you are doing is actually generational impact. You're impacting people's lives. Just bring us all together on Africa Day, because we probably all would have just been doing our own thing at home, but we're here, we're together, having very meaningful conversations. We're going to eat really nice food. So I just wanted to end this by saying thank you very much. The food is at the back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, I feel so proud of knowing all of you, our speakers and everybody in this room. 4 years ago, we could not have done this, or you could not have found a room such as this in Berlin. And just the innovation that you're working on, the perception is that people of color are not founding companies or products that are so innovative or creative that are deserving of funding. Who here believes that this is very innovative, like what they're working on is deserving of more than funding? I think you're changing lives, you're changing entire generations just like me, but with what I'm doing with BlackinTechBerlin, and I think you deserve so much more. If the funding comes, great. If it doesn't come, keep pushing. You know, we're supporting you, we're behind you, and I really feel like the future is going to be better and greater. Like this Afrofuturism that we're imagining, we can step into that reality and step out and create it. I think it's already happening. And thank you so much, and happy Africa Day, everybody.